Hey guys, Codepunk here. Welcome to another tutorial of reactjs, and today we're going to learn how we can create data table in React. So what is a data table? A data table is just like a simple table in which we have the ability to add, edit, or delete the data and also sort out the data, like search operation, sort by, or something like that. So the first step I'm going to do is I have a folder over here and I'm going to open command prompt, zoom in there a little bit so you guys can see it better, and I'm going to create a React app from scratch using yarn create React app, and I'm going to name it React tables. We know this is going to install some packages and then it's going to tell us that, hey, run this command. So I'm going to save you guys some time, so let's skip to the best part and let's start. Okay, this is done now. So it's telling us to run the yarn start command. So I'm just going to do the yarn start. Oh, we have to navigate into the folder yarn start, and we have our server going. So I'm just going to drop that folder on our VS Code so we can start the development. And I'm going to open the app.js, and I'm going to remove all of the content in here and just add a div. Okay, remove the import so we have a scratch. And also I'm going to create a components folder in which I'm going to add my components. Okay, so in components folder, I'm going to create a new file called datatable.js. This is going to be our main component for data table. So just a simple export default function, which is going to be our component. Okay, and a basic return from it, which is going to contain an HTML table element. So I'm going to come to the main file over here, app.js, and I'm going to mount that main component over here so we can see that. Okay, so we need to build this data table right now. I'm going to add a head, and right now we're going with the examples of some persons. So we're going to have the name, age, and gender of the persons, and last column that is going to be the actions, which is going to contain the buttons for edit and delete for our rows. Right. So right now we are going to display some basic or dummy data in over there, but there's a question right now. The question, where is the data coming from? So when you are developing the application for a client or on a practical level, you're going to load the data from database or any other source or from third-party API. Right now, we do not want to communicate with database or any API because that is out of the context. So we are just going to create a raw data array over here and assume that this is going to come from our database. So I'm going to create 3 users over here, which we're going to work with, and with dummy data. Right, we got our raw data. So right now, let's fill the table with the data. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a state called table data and make the method set table data to change the state, and call use state hook from React and give our raw data as default to this state. So we have the table data right now. I'm going to create a key body and loop through that table data using map. We're going to get the row data in our map method, and we're going to return a tr. As we're going to return, we're going to use parentheses. So first we're going to show row data.name, row data.age, and row data.gender. In last column is going to contain 2 buttons, one for editing and one for delete. We got the data. Now let's head over to our CSS file and let's write some basic CSS so we get a nice looking UI. So I'm gonna put some reset CSS over here, padding 0, margin 0, and box sizing default to border box. For table, I'm going to give the width of 100%, And in table, the th and td, we're going to give them a bottom of 1 pixel solid. And lastly, padding and text align center or left is going to be awesome. So lastly, for the buttons, we are going to give them padding of 2 pixel and left right 4 pixel and change the font size to 12 pixels and give them margin right 2 pixels so to separate them. Okay, we got our table with nice look. We need a way to add more data into the table. So for that, we are going to head over to our files over here, and in the component, we are going to create a new component called dataform.js. This component will serve the purpose for adding our data into our form and giving us that nice UI. So let's create that, a default function, dataform, and we're going to return a div from here, and I'm going to give this div a class called data-form. In there, we're going to have a form tag, and in that, we're going to have a div with label. And first label is going to be name and then an input for the name. So the user can input that name. I'm going to give it name, and ID also name. And in label, we're going to give an HTML var attribute. And in that attribute, we're going to put the ID of the input that we are pointing to. Okay, and let's come over here and we are going to add a React fragment, and after the table, we're going to mount that data form component. So we see our nice little form over here. Let's add more inputs. This one, we're going to give it the ID and name of age, because this is going to contain our age. So we're going to give it the type number. Let's suppose we want the minimum age to be 18 and maximum age to be 65. There's going to be a third input, and that's going to be for our gender. Let's give it gender, but instead of input, we're going to use a select. Name it gender, close that select, and in there we're going to have options. It's obviously going to be male, and after that, female. We got our 3 nice inputs. Last, we need a submit button, and we're going to name it add. There we go. Okay, let's give our data form a nice touch by adding a little CSS. I'm going to give it display flex and flex wrap. And in data form, the DRVs, we are going to style them by giving them width 50%. And in data form, the inputs and the labels, we're going to give them display block. And the DIVs, we're going to give them padding. 4 pixels from top bottom and 10 pixels from left right. We're going to reduce the font size and give them text transform looking good, and the font weight should be bold. And also we're going to give the form background EEE, giving a nice little touch and padding, and margin top, that is going to be 20 pixels to separate this from table. Right, and we are also going to add the select over here. So we got our form. Let's add some events, but before that, I just want to do one more thing that is going to be flex and to align the button to the input. Okay, back to the form. We need some state variables to save the data from these inputs. So let's create some states. And those are going to be name, one for name. So use state, the default should be empty. And for age, the default should be 18. And for gender, the default will be male. Let's pass those state values to our input. That is going to be in the value attribute, passing like this. And in the select, we are just going to pass a selected prop to each of the options and give it the condition to check for gender state if it is equal to that value of the option. Gender equals to female. And also, we want to change the state whenever the input has been changed. So we have to write the onChange event over here, and that is going to accept a method, and we're going to call the state method with the latest value. Same goes for the age over here. E set age, e.target.value, and for the select, it's going to be same, set gender, e.target. Let's test that over here. Working fine. Okay, so we got ourselves a data form, but right now when we click on this add, we want to add that data to our table over here. So to do that, we need to add an event to the onSubmit over here, and we're going to do that by just creating the onSubmit callback method over here. So I'm going to name it onSubmit callback, and we're going to use the onSubmit callback over here to create the method, right? And in that method, we can accept an E, which is going to be the event, and we can prevent that just to not load the refresh the page whenever this form is submitted. Okay, let's try again. When we click on add, nothing's happening because we are preventing the default option. So right now we need to pass this data to our data table over here. So for that, we are going to add a prop over here, which is this component going to accept, and that is going to be on create. And we're going to call that on create prop, and that is going to be a method, and pass it our data over here from the form whenever we click the add. Let's pass that prop over here. So to do that, I'm going to create a method over here called onSave, right? And we can create that method, and in that method we can accept the name, gender, and obviously the age. So right now we need to pass that over here to onCreateProp, and we can call that onSave. Let's test that out. So we can do console.log saving new data. Let's open the console. Okay, I'm gonna make it big. Okay, we got a bunch of warnings over here. That is because of the key prop. So we're going to clear that up by adding a key over here. Right now we don't have any key in our data, and that is going to be any ID for a row from database, that a unique ID every row has, but right now we don't have that. So we are just going to use the map method index, and we're going to pass that in here. Okay, so that gets updated, right? And also we have a default warning because we're not using the default value prop, right? We don't need to use the selected, that is old method. So I'm just going to clear that out, and let's pass the default value prop. And in that, we are going to just pass the gender. That is the best option right now. So reload, that goes away. Let's test our onCreateProp by clicking on add, and it says saving new data. Okay, that is good. So we need to add this new data to our table data state over here, but we just cannot do that by passing like simply pushing the data into this, because we need to use this method to save the data. But we need to pass the existing data appended with the new data to this method. To do that, we are going to create a copy of the table data, not just a copy but a deep copy. So to do that, we are going to call the slice method, and what this method does is it just creates it iterates through the array and copies all the elements to our new array that we are returning to. So I'm going to start from 0 index and whatever data is in there, so to the length of that array. And we got ourselves new data, and we're going to push a new object into it with name, age, and gender that we get from the data form. And lastly, we are going to call the setTableData method and set it to the new data that we have appended with. Okay, time to test that out. So I'm going to input mark in here and set the age to 26, and let's hit add. We got ourselves mark in the table and no error, so this is going good. And I'm going to remove this console log over here, and we got ourselves the data table where we can add any kind of data. So I'm going to create another one called Mike, and this is going to be 32. And there we go. So right now we also need to add the functionality for our delete method. Okay, so but first we are going to decouple the this row from here and create a separate component for that, because that way we can manage the components easily. So I'm going to head over to my files, and in the component folder I'm going to create a new data row.js, and I'm going to create a component over here, simple component, and we're just going to cut this away from the row from here and paste it in here and return that. We don't need this key right now over here, so that is good. Okay, we have forgot the function keyword, and also we need that data, so I'm just going to accept the row data prop over here, and we're going to mount that component over here, data row, and we're going to give it the data by passing that row data. And we're going to give the key prop over here by just passing that index, so no warnings are made. Okay, let's test. This is working fine. Okay, let's add Mike. Okay, so we need to add the delete functionality next. For that, we are just going to accept a onDelete method over here. And for onDelete, that is going to be a prop, and we're going to give this the onDelete, and for that, we're going to create a onDelete callback over here. That is going to be receive and index whichever data that we want to delete. That will be the index of that. Okay, and we'll pass that over here to the onDelete right now. And also we should pass the index over here. So we should just say index and index. So we also have the index over here. And when we click on this onDelete, we need to call that onDelete method, right? Okay, so create a method over here. So we need to call that onDelete by passing it that index to delete this data. Okay, in the onDelete, we need to delete that row specified by that index. We are going to create a new data right now, and we're going to make a deep copy, same like we did before. And in that new data, we are going to call the splice method. What splice does is it takes the first method from where to start, the first parameter, where to start the deleting of the elements. So we're going to pass it that index, and how many elements to delete, we're going to pass it 1. So we have the element removed from our new data right now. So we're just gonna pass that new data to our set table data right now, and this will update the data. We did an error there, so that was a mistake. So let's change that, and there we go. Okay, so we need to delete John. There we go. The Mark and Sarah is working fine. Let's add another one, Mike, and let's add Sarah. So delete Mike. There we go. The delete is working fine now. So we need to just add the edit option over here. So the edit option is going to be a little complex, not simple like onSave, onDelete, because we need to update the row at that index. So for that, we are going to simply add another prop, or accept another prop, event prop over here. That is going to be on edit, and that is going to be called when the edit button is clicked. So we're going to call it and pass it the index. Let's come back over here and let's create a state over here called editing, and let's set that default to false. And on edit, we need to create a callback over here, which we're going to pass to on edit. So let's set the state of editing to that index, and let's pass that callback to our data row over here. We on edit, and let's call that, pass that on edit over here. So we're setting that prop over here by calling that on edit. We're going to use this component, the existing data form component, to edit the row. We are going to come over to data form over here, and we are accepting a prop update. and by default this is going to be false. So let's come down over here and let's set this button's text to update whenever the update prop is true. So we are going to simply add a condition over here. If it is update, then say update, and if not, then say add, right? So whenever we click on edit, this is going to say update, but we need to pass that update prop over here. So we're just gonna pass the editing state of this data table component that we are setting when we click on the edit. So whenever we click on edit, this is going to say update. And we also need to add another button over here if it is an update operation. So we can say button that is going to say cancel, right? Else nothing. Okay, there we go, cancel. So on this cancel, we are also going to accept an on cancel prop right now. That is that we are going to pass in to this cancel button when clicked. That's going to call the on cancel. So back to square one to the data table component, we're going to create another method on cancel that is simply going to set the editing to false, and we need to pass that in. Let's format this right so we can understand better. Let's pass the on cancel prop over here, and we can say on cancel. So whenever we hit cancel, this is going to revert back to add. Okay, now we need to simply pass in the data over here so we can show this row data to update that row. Let's come back, and in the data form, we're going to add a use effect. And we need to call this use effect whenever the update prop changes, right? And in that, we need to say if it is an update operation, we can set the name to our data row that we are editing, right? So we need to pass that data over here. We can simply do that by coming and let's say row, we can say data. Okay, so we need to set the editing to true, and we also need to create another state to hold the index of whatever row we are editing. So we can say set edit index, right? And we're gonna call it the edit index, because when we edit the first row, it is going to be the 0 index, and that will be considered as same as false. So we're not going to be editing anything if we hit the first row. You see that add comes back. So we need to hold another state to hold the data for our edit index. We're going to pass the false as default. So we're going to come down over here, and we're going to set the set edit index to the index. Okay, and down here we need to check if we are editing, then return the table data from that edit index, else we simply return an empty object. Okay, let's hit edit. Working fine. For the first row, it's working fine. So we need to show this data that we are accepting, right? So let's, if we have the update operation, we need to pass that data.name to set name. Whenever we click edit, this is going to hold that data, whichever row that we are editing right now. And when we hit cancel, and also we need to change this, call this effect whenever the data changes. So when we are editing one row and we click on another row edit, it is going to update. Okay, so let's also set the age and gender to whatever data that we are passing. Right, not working. The gender is not working because we have given the default value, right? Okay, we have given the default value to label. Sorry, that was a mistake. So let's give that to the select, because default value is always rendered whenever the select is rendered first time. So we need to pass in the selected prop. So we can say gender equals to male. Okay, now it's working, right? Okay, lastly, we just need to call the on cancel on update method, because whenever we hit update, we do not need to add this data, but simply update that existing data, right? So in the on submit callback, we're just going to create an if condition. If it is an update operation, we need not to call the on create. Okay. On update, we need to call accept another prop that we are calling whenever we want to update. So we're going to pass the new data to on update to change that data into the table. Right now, we're not passing the on update over here. Let's create that callback. So let's create another callback on update, and this is going to accept the name and gender that is the new data, update data from the data form. And as always the same, we are going to create a deep copy of our table data, right, from the start to the end. And in the new data, at the index, whichever that we are editing, edit index, we're going to put the new data, and we're going to update the table data with our new data. And lastly, we're also going to set the editing to false and the edit index to also false. And we just need to pass this on update hook to our on update prop, right? The callback. Let's test that out. Reload, and when we hit that John, we update the age to 31 and hit update. It says 31, right? But we still haven't resetting the form over here. Let's reset that by coming over here, and we create an else statement, and we set the name to empty, set the age to default as it was in 18, and gender to male as default. Let's hit the Sarah again and change the age to 43 and gender to male. Update that goes updates, let's say Natalie, and we add that as 35 female. There we go.